guys, it's Charles again. Thanks for coming back to our educational series on how to invest in real estate. Last week we began off talking about second suites, legal second suite, what it is and what are the pros. And this week we're going to go through some of the cons and requirements that you must understand before you get into this strategy. Right. So first con is that this takes a lot of capital for rental. So for an average investor who are starting out, maybe it's your first, you may not have the capital, right? So it's important to understand if you're trying to pull off this strategy, make sure you have the capital or you're somehow able to buy some time so down the road you will be able to extract out equity from this house to do the renovation to finish the project. Okay, let's go through the requirements. So first requirement is parking, right? Different cities have different parking requirements. Some cities, it allows tandem parking, which means you can have one car parked in the front of the other. But some city, it requires side-by-side parking, right? Side-by-side is always preferred regardless as if it's minimum tenant interaction or disputes, right? So even though the city only requires to have tenant parking, you should always have to widen your driveway so that the parking situation, you're not asking for trouble between the two tenants, right? One thing to note here is sometimes there's a big tree in front of the front yard. And I've seen a lot of cases where you thought you were able to widen the driveway to accommodate for parking, just to find out the forestry department get involved, and next thing you know, you can't really cut down the tree or you can't widen the driveway because it's going to damage the root of the tree. So you have no choice but to move the parking to your backyard, which kind of sucks. Okay, so next requirement we're going to talk about is square footage. So this is funny one. Some city have minimums and some city have maximum. Bungalows are great because the basement is almost the same size as the main floor in terms of square footage. And you can mirror a lot of the layouts between the upper and the basement. But in city of Hamilton where I invest, so we need to have a minimum of 699 square footage. It cannot be smaller than that, which makes sense. But in St. Catherine, for example, they have a maximum of 650 square footage, which to me doesn't really make sense, right? So a lot of times I see designers, tweaking around the size of the living room just to make everything, look smaller and put up a wall after. There's ways to get it done, but definitely the city is not easy to work with if they have a maximum mindset, right? I think in Guelph it's a maximum of 860 square feet as well. I'm not sure why would they would put the maximum, but just again check with your city, right? It may not be so intuition. Next will be ceiling height. So this is more of a building code related constraint. You don't want your basement to be too small or low ceiling height, so you're always constantly butting your head. So there's a two-part to this. If your home is newer, right, then you are referring to section part 9 of the Ontario Building Code, and I believe the ceiling height requirement is 6.11 feet. If your home is much older, then you have to refer to the part 11 of the Ontario Building Code, and your minimum ceiling height has to be 6.5 feet, right? There's some lenience towards underneath the duct as well as beams, and I've seen some city inspector pass that, so that's not a deal killer if you don't meet the minimum ceiling height underneath those things, right? It's just localized, right? Okay, next will be for every unit that you create, you need to have 2 points of escape, right? Um, that's because of the fire safety, right? If let's say fire, there's a kitchen, there's a fire near the kitchen, and the main entrance is close to the kitchen, then at least you have another point of escape, um, which is opposite. Ideal to have it opposite from where the main entrance is. We achieve this by oftentimes creating something called a escape window or egress window, um, and it's this is usually situated in the bedroom, which is opposite to the main entrance, right? So if there's the fire, you're able to slip your body through and escape. Okay, next is fire separation. So fire separation, each unit must have its own fire separation. It must be fire separated from one another, right? We achieve fire separation by having assemblies, right? It's not just one material product which is going to give you fire separation, right? So in case of, let's say, ceiling height, you're trying to divide up the basement ceiling to the floor of the main unit. The assembly will comprise of 2x4 wood studs 16-inch apart, 5/8 drywall, metal resilient channel, fire and sound insulation in the cavity, right? All of these things together is going to give you 60-minute rating in fire. So if there's a fire, it takes about 60 minutes for the fire to burn through. That's what we're trying to aim for, right? Also, a few things to note for, because there is no fire separation in the ductwork, oftentimes we have to install in-duct smoke detector that will turn off the furnace when activated, right? And also pot lights, right? Pot light has to be a fire prevention box, right? And also wiring and plumbing openings, you need to install fire caulking or fire rated collar so that the fire doesn't travel through, right? Also, we need to have smoke alarms with strobe light in every room and one in every hallway, carbon monoxide detector in each of the floor, and all these needs to be interconnected between the two units. So if properly fire separated, only needs interconnected within one unit, which connects to the both, right? So fire separation is a bigger topic, right? You need to understand what you're getting into, but at the end of the day, if there's a fire in one of the unit, we want to prevent the fire spreading too fast to the other unit. Okay, zoning. So before you buy your property, each city usually have their own zoning map website. You should check on there, right, to see if your property is zoned to allow you to have a legal second suite, right? And this differs city by city. So you need to make sure you change that. If your property is zoned not to have a legal second suite and you're trying to add a legal second suite, then you need to change the zoning, which is a huge task, right? So we don't want to get into that, right, for this strategy. Okay, and next will be getting the permit, right? So begin considering this process before you even close on the property, right? Usually we get the planner in to do the measurements and come up with several layouts for your new unit. And the contractor should also be there to give you some feedback on the plans. And the design and submitting the city for the permit usually takes 3 to 5 weeks. So make sure the more you can get it done before you close, the faster your renovation will be able to start, right? For the design, you can either hire a BCIN designer or an architect, or you can do it yourself, right? But just watch out for anything that's structure. Anything structural, you might need an engineering stamp. Anything that is HVAC related that you need heat loss calculation, that might require a professional for the permit process. So, but other than that, everything else, if you are a little bit engineering oriented, you may be able to produce the drawing yourself, right? Um, the great thing about the second suite design is that, unlike the larger projects, you don't really need to account for developmental fees, right? There's no parkland dedication fees, right? Um, all you need is maybe registration fees, and in some cases you might have to do a minor variance fee, but it's very little compared to all the other developments, right? It's by right, so it shouldn't cost that much to get your permit, right? And lastly, if your requirement cannot be met, you can apply for minor variance. So this is something we just spoke about. If your property is zoned right and it meets, let's say 90% of all the bylaws, but it has 10% that you cannot meet, oftentimes this is like parking, you can ask for something called a minor variance. But when you do minor variance, you're getting the neighbors involved, and there's usually a hearing date held by a committee of adjustment. So it's a little bit more lengthy process, and that could take 2 to 4 months, and application fee could cost anywhere from 3 grand to 6 grand, right? So for this strategy, I would highly advise you not to go through minor variance. There's plenty of inventory out there, so the best will be to find a property that you don't need to go through a minor variance, right? Okay, so other cons include vacancy during rental, right? So from permit to completion, you should accommodate for about 6 months for the project to finish. So during the 6 months, you're actually carrying the property, you're paying the property mortgage, you're paying the property tax, you're paying all those costs, but you don't have any income coming in, right? So before you go ahead and do the renovation, make sure you take a look that you're good for another 6 months. Soundproofing. Okay, so because oftentimes we're creating the second suite in the basement, the soundproofing isn't gonna be totally, separated. It's not gonna be totally quiet, especially when you have a shared duct system, right? There's certain strategies and items that people can purchase to mitigate the sound, but the sound is never gonna be 100% soundproof. Also, keep in mind, although we can split up the meters for the hydro, the water and the gas is very, very difficult to split for these single family homes. So oftentimes this will be charged back to the owner. You can either do, 60-40 split between the main and the basement unit, or come up with other creative ways to charge back the tenant, but you won't be able to, directly charge how much they use, right? So in conclusion, right, second suites are an amazing way to add solid cash flow property to your portfolio, right? Basically, you can double the rent on a single family home, um, which is crazy, right? So it has huge potential for forced appreciation, right? We talk about the difference between natural appreciation, where the market, it's depending on the market and the recent sold. This one, you are appreciating the value of it by strategic renovation. So you're not really waiting for the market. So if you buy right, this could be great for you, and you'll be able to refinance after the project is done. This is not cheap, but or quick, but manageable with the right team. This is the key, right? If you're working with the realtor who understand this strategy, and you're working with a designer who has done and dealt with the city, and a contractor who understand what the city inspector is looking for, things could go a lot smoother. right? So hiring the right team is a key. And that's it. So if you enjoy this, make sure you go to my website down in the link and download your free copy of deal analysis sheet. And please subscribe. Yeah, thank you. Bye for now.